What do football and cuisine have in common? Well, I mean football and cuisine of a high level and caliber indeed. In both these cases, the sophisticated combination of different ingredients is required, and when one of the pieces is visibly missing, it immediately spoils everything, even if all other parts are absolutely fine. It was widely believed that scoring goals is the most difficult thing in football, but nowadays this claim looks dubious at best, especially if we check the latest Champions League results, with a bunch of high-scoring affairs in almost each match day. The truth is that intensity, work rate, and speed are even more important, especially if we take a longer period of time. If a top club on a slide, managers at first are searching for an extra speed and energy, and when the time of crucial games is coming, they tend to do exactly the same. In those cases, these two necessities inevitably collide, and Cristiano Ronaldo is definitely not the first star who had to suffer from it. In 1992, Jean-Pierre Papin, the incumbent Ballon d'Or laureate back at the time, suddenly found himself in a similar position. Moving from Marseille to AC Milan, the strongest and most prestigious club in the world of that period, the Frenchman was playing much less than he expected, partly due to the proverbial free foreigners on the pitch rule, but mainly in view of his lack of defensive work and movement. Being a prodigious poacher, Papin, even in his golden years, used to implement wait-and-see tactics, and for that reason was hardly compatible with the famous Marco van Basten. The Dutch maestro was perhaps the only player whom the ever-demanding and pedantic Fabio Capello allowed to be relatively free of defensive duties, but the calculating nature of the great Italian coach couldn't withstand two such players on the pitch, even if it is about pure strikers. That's why Van Basten and Papin played together only in few games and strictly against the minor opponents, when this combined deficiency couldn't hurt AC Milan too much. As for crucial matches against strong teams, Napoli, Inter and Juventus, Capello was opting to partner the Dutchman with either Daniele Massara or Marco Simone, who were well known for their zeal and operability. While Papin eventually got his chance to perform regularly due to Van Basten's severe injury, Romario, the other marquee name in football, was less fortunate during his time at Valencia, signing the luxurious contract with the club that in 1996, right before his arrival, finished second in Primera. The Brazilian could scarcely envisage that he will spend there only several weeks. Luis Aragonés, who managed Valencia back then, wasn't the biggest fan of this acquisition, to put it mildly, keeping in mind that Romario had a naughty habit to rest on the pitch for hours between his numerous goals. But the Spaniard was even less impressed when he saw that the capricious South American, during one of the first training sessions, refused to walk and instead of it demonstratively sat on the chair and started to admonish and heavily criticize his teammates. On the pitch, the coach and the player also didn't hit it off. Trying to find some kind of solution, Aragonés gave Romario playing time only against the weaker opponents and sidelined him on both occasions when Valencia confronted, and did it successfully, the mighty Bayern in the UEFA Cup, using the footballer's light injuries as a pretext. It's curious that despite their strained relationship, the forward scored 4 goals in Primera in a short period of time, but the coach was still pretty much frustrated with the overall situation, seeing to what extent Romario's presence on the pitch destabilizing the team which is forced to defend and run permanently, having one man less than the opposition. The home defeat versus Logroñés, when the Brazilian didn't convert a penalty, proved to be a final straw, and after fallout, the striker left the club on loan, leaving Valencia in utter disarray. Interestingly enough, next summer Jorge Valdano, who succeeded the overstressed Aragones in the dugout, brought Romario back in hope of building the club's bright future together. The Argentine highly regarded the forward and was sure that his combinational system of play will be able to disguise those shortcomings. But reality proved to be extremely brutal. Romario picked up an injury, and in his absence, the coach has been axed after the dreadful start to the season. The young Claudio Ranieri took the place of Valdano and promptly made clear that he won't tolerate the Brazilians' casual attitude. As a result, the South American soon left the Mestalla for the second time, after only few games under the Italians' guidance. This story shows us that it's a very complex matter, how to treat the player with incredible skills, but with pretty evident limitations as well. It depends on many variables: tactical approach, personnel of the concrete team, its strength in general and in relation to concrete opponents, and overall environment, the specific tournaments in which this team plays. It's a matter of philosophy and point of view, and the very same Romario has played, and played splendidly, for the Brazilian national team in the same 1997. Why? Well, the primary reason is simple. With sheer power and class this team had, it could afford to have a footballer up front who is not particularly diligent, and even two of this kind, keeping in mind Ronaldo, with whom Romario formed the fruitful and memorable duo. The younger Brazilian adopted the style of his senior teammate and wasn't willing to run a lot and defend either. But even such a giant can't endlessly give adversaries an initial advantage, running each game 10 kilometers less and actively defending with just 8 outfield men. Mario Zagallo, who managed the Seleção back at the time, realized it even more clearly right before the 1998 World Cup, on the back of two friendly games against Germany and Argentina, where the illustrious pair has been not particularly effective. Knowing that Brazil will face in France the competitors of the same caliber and intensity at the final stages of the playoff, Zagallo completely changed his mind and on the eve of the tournament suddenly left Romario out of the squad, using his relatively light injury as the key reason. There is an opinion that with the illustrious duo Brazil would have never lost that final against France, but in all honesty it's more likely that the Seleção would have been eliminated even before this point, if we recall how vulnerable defensively this team was. As for the aforementioned Ronaldo, he is even a better illustration of how differently one player could look and has been perceived. Most of the fans revere him as a legend, genius and miracle maker, and this reputation is surely well deserved. But there is the other side of Ronaldo's game. His way of doing things was extremely strange, even, I dare to use this word, pretty selfish. First of all, in the vast majority of matches, the Brazilian was the footballer with the fewest amount of touches on the pitch. Usually he had only 30-40 of those. You may argue that being centre forward, it's much harder to get the ball, especially back at the time, when even most of the top clubs were not particularly skillful and inventive in their offensive endeavors. But the truth is that Ronaldo also moved very little. His operating area and so-called heat map were incredibly narrow. That's why at times there were stints when he didn't catch the ball for 20-25 minutes. As for his defensive contribution, it was so meager that some forwards pressed and tackled much more in 10 minutes than him during the whole match. It's also significant that being rather a tall player, Ronaldo scrupulously avoided any aerial duels and basically didn't contribute this way at all. It's no exaggeration to say that he played in the self-contained regime through pretty brief but obviously effective explosions, especially at Inter, a poor passing team which was pretty badly organized offensively. In this light, the words about the Brazilian that have been said by the famous Dynamo Kiev manager Valery Lobanovsky are looking rather reasonable than ludicrous. It's interesting that Lobanovsky also held up as an example Andrei Shevchenko, the player who was comparable to Ronaldo in terms of offensive manner, efficiency and skills, but at the same time has been much more active, agile and vigorous in his defensive and teamwork. So where is the truth? Well, it strictly depends from the point of view, and paradoxically enough, this orthodox and at times even unhealthy mode in which Ronaldo has used to play verifies and magnifies his greatness, because only a footballer of enormous magnitude could have been granted such freedom and luxury, especially we recall how tactically sophisticated and defensively orientated Serie A was in those days. But it would be also fair to say that this gamble, blind in many ways, didn't bring Inter too much success. Yes, Ronaldo's unique attacking moves helped the team win the UEFA Cup in 1998 and almost brought the Scudetto in the same year, but on the longer run, this risky approach proved to be wrong. And it's not just that the South American got several devastating injuries. In fact, even prior to that, the side has been hopelessly tired of serving the star, constantly defending, having one man less. In the next season, Ronaldo played enough games, despite persistent injuries, but this model didn't yield any particularly positive results, neither in the Champions League nor in Serie A. The current Cristiano situation is pretty similar to it. On one hand, we have a star that's still capable to score a lot. Yes, the Portuguese's numbers dipped with turn, but apparently it's a consequence of lack of playing minutes and unfamiliar role. The five-time Ballon d'Or winner most definitely is not accustomed to be a footballer without a guaranteed place in the starting lineup. On the other hand, while he's doing his bit of work, Ronaldo puts the rest of the team under relentless pressure, very much like his Brazilian namesake did in the past. The only major difference is movement. Even at the age of 37, Cristiano is a relatively mobile player who is able to stably run about 9 or 9.5 kilometers per match. It's only kilometer or kilometer and a half shy of good stats for this particular position. For instance, even the much younger Kylian Mbappé moves less on average. In other words, it's something with which the demanding Erik ten Hag could not only live but also work. But the Portuguese's reluctance to be an integral part of the press is a huge obstacle. The Dutchman's system of play is based on regular pretty high defense, and it's absolutely unacceptable when one man is missing up front in this case. In this scenario, the efforts of the others will be simply ruined, because Ten Hag couldn't afford to send an extra midfielder in this zone without putting his team in a real jeopardy, and two wingers couldn't compensate the passiveness of Ronaldo too. Therefore, the United manager opted not to start the Portuguese in the most important games, when his side should be the most vulnerable without the ball and where every drop in intensity would be instantly punished. And the results are in his favor, at least so far. On the other hand, we can refresh in memory the last campaign, when Cristiano used to play in those matches, and moreover, made a serious scoring impact, but at the distance of 10 games, the overall balance proved to be negative, even if we exclude 2 contests he completely missed. The problem is that the effective absence of one man in defense is a really costly thing in the modern football, in particular in the Premier League, which is, along with the Bundesliga, currently provides the most fast and intensive play in the world. We should add that the United are a soft and relatively static team, which is shaky defensively even after the recent addition of Casemiro. Hence, it's pretty tough to accommodate the player with Ronaldo's limitations, without serious risk of damaging the net result. On top of that, Ten Hag is forced to bear in mind one simple fact. Cristiano's contract with MU expires within a few months, and at the moment it's hard to imagine that it would be prolonged. As a result, the Dutchman already should try to build a new team for the future, without relying on the Portuguese too much. Under these circumstances, he obviously doesn't consider Ronaldo as a key player, only as the one who could help.